All right, we are now live on Facebook once again, and this is another live guided Gene Keys session. I'm Justin, and I am a Gene Keys master guide. And what are the Gene Keys exactly? What is a Gene Keys guide? Well, the Gene Keys are an amazing wisdom system that reveal your purpose, your struggles, your challenges, the breakthroughs you're meant to happen from those, and also the abilities that were always yours that you can wield more consciously because you're aware of them. Today, here as my guest, I have Angelique. Hello, Angelique. I just introduced myself, so I'd like you to take a moment to introduce yourself a bit, where you're from, and what it is that you're here to do and to help other individuals with.
Well, thank you so much for hosting this, Justin. I was quite excited when I saw this pop up. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Angelique Coster. I run a healing business in South Africa that's available online. And I really just wanted to learn more about gene keys because I've seen, especially within the last few years, a lot of people have already known about numerology and astrology. Gene keys always felt like something I'd heard about but never really experienced. And once I pulled up my map, it was even more confusing. I was like, what is this thing with the yeah, it's just I'm really just here to learn more about how to embody more of my skill sets that are already in my DNA blueprint. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, you already understand some of the language of that because your gifts and your abilities are in your DNA. They are in your genetics. And one thing we say within the wisdom and the language of the gene keys is that they help you to activate and embrace your genius. And a lot of individuals, when they use the word genius, they mean intelligence or how
Mm.
smart you are. But I like within the language of the gene keys, it really means unlocking and activating your inherent abilities that are embedded in your DNA and your genetics. It's what you're meant to be good at. And the only thing that gets in the way of those are, well, some people call them shadows, some people call them bad habits. So every gift is embedded within a shadow. So that gives a nice segue for me to introduce why I'm a guide, because I've heard from other individuals that they get their gene keys profile, which is a map of your energetic blueprint. And it's a mess of numbers and colors and shapes and obscure words and symbols. And there's so much benefit to be had. And as a guide, the last thing I want people to do is to get lost before they even embark on the journey. So that's a nice way for me to say what I do as a guide. I'm here to make the gene keys as accessible to the individual journey as possible. So you already said a little bit about what drew you to the gene keys. You're looking to, well, embrace your gifts that are there within your DNA. So I'll share a little bit about how can the gene keys reveal your abilities within your DNA. How does this system work? So the way it works is that based on the date of your birth, the location of your birth, and the time of your birth, is that there's this energetic imprinting on your DNA, on your genetics, on your soul. And 3 years ago, when I discovered this system, I was highly skeptical. I said, how can that be? It sounds like science fiction. It sounds like magic, wizardry, sorcery. But as you begin to voyage through the gene keys and you sense the synchronicities, you experience them, and you feel like you're uncovering aspects of yourself that you had forgotten, it in a way becomes undeniable. So that's how your birthday, location of birth, time of birth contributes and affects your energetic blueprint. So I did get that information from you already, and
Mhm.
before this guided session, I was already beginning to share aspects of your life theme with you, and you were already expressing how resonant it was. So I'm excited to share with you even more nuanced details and layers of that same reading. So let me go here and yes. So yours, and this again is based on your energetic blueprint,
Mm.
your gene keys. Yours is the personal life theme of penetration. So your life theme is that you're meant to penetrate life on many levels. Wherever you go, whoever you meet, you always become engaged, reaching through your intuitive senses right into people's lives swiftly and without effort. Another aspect of this is you have an ability to like cut straight to the heart of things. You just penetrate right through the heart of things. Some words that come to mind is just like you cut through the BS. You just get straight to the heart of things. If you pay attention, you can gauge others' motivations, ambitions, and fears, often instantly understanding much about someone's life situation. Without always knowing how, you can shock others into a new awareness of their life circumstances, opening up the possibility for them to make substantial adjustments in their lives. And what I find fascinating is that as I'm sharing this with you, I'm thinking about what you shared with me your vocation is and what you're studying. I'm like, oh, interesting. Yeah, so go ahead. Does anything come to mind that is resonant or that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think, everything you said there, really, the moment you say it, there's like these snippets that play through my mind that, like, oh, that makes sense. So when I was still in corporate, because I tried to run away from my sole purpose for a long time in terms of being in healing and coaching and mentoring. And I was like, no, I'm going to just get a normal job and be a normal human. And I went into corporate, and every single time I was in corporate, there was someone that would come up to me and say, just by you being here, you're changing the way that I see life. And I don't know if I like that. And as you were now saying, like being able to see people's motivations and connect to them and impart things with them, even if I'm not consciously doing it, I can definitely see that I have had many colleagues that became friends that changed their life paths and went into different careers simply because they forgot they loved something until they met me and they're like, oh, I used to like this, and then change their pathways. So that definitely resonates.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's something I say as well as a Gene Keys guide. And even though I refer to myself as a Gene Keys guide, I'm really just an advocate of people living their best lives, of embracing their purpose. So, one thing I say is that your purpose isn't necessarily something you're meant to do, it's who you're meant to be. And we talk about gifts and abilities. And the way I understand gifts and abilities, it's more like an essence or an aura
Mm.
or an energy. And when you're living a life that is aligned with how you're meant to live and you're vibrating at this optimal frequency, people around you, they just benefit. And you didn't even have to do anything. You're just living your gifts rather than trying to do what you
Mm.
feel you have to do to share your gifts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think
Yeah.
that resonates quite a lot with the journey that I've been on, in terms of, learning how to, as you said in the beginning, kind of like surrender more into the genes instead
Yeah.
of trying to figure it out and becoming very mental about it, very logical about it, and just being able to express, like I do with having brown hair and green eyes. And, it's something that I've accepted is part of how I look. And that's something I see as genetics, but I think it's really interesting being able to surrender to the deeper genes, the
Mm,
deeper expressions.
yeah. Yeah. I totally get you there. Um, and I can also relate to running away from your gifts and running away from your calling and running away from your purpose because it can be intimidating. It can be scary. And that's why I do what I do. What can I share with people that give them insights into their hunches being certainties that what they feel called to do is what they're meant to do? How do we shorten that trajectory? So I'll continue on and I'll read the second part of this life theme, and there are three parts to it. So this is the second. So It says potentially deeply intuitive, but I know it's not potentially. I know you're deeply intuitive. So deeply intuitive, you don't always appreciate the effects that you're, wow, we just mentioned this and there it is. So deeply intuitive, you don't always appreciate the effects that your penetrating abilities have on others, nor that others do not necessarily have the same perceptions you do. While engaging with people, be clear that you come from a place of integrity rather than a place of manipulation. And remember to always access another's life from a foundation of love. So, unnecessarily taking advantage of someone will eventually have repercussions for you and them,
Mm.
but instigating mutual growth and benefit will enhance your lives greatly. I've shared this reading with other individuals who have the same life theme, and some were taken aback by the warning. But I understand that with gifts come shadows. So this reading may be resonant with someone who has certain patterns that they may benefit from being aware of so that they can use the abilities of, this penetrating gift to affect others. So that said, yeah, does anything resonate with you from this year?
I think so far I can definitely see why you're into G keys. You're very
Mm.
good at it.
Thank you.
The warning I find is very apt, and I
Mm,
think it's important for people. Although that's one that I've had for myself for a while. I've had my doctor, my pastor, people in my life say to me, "We're so grateful, Angelique, that you have a good heart because your mind is very dangerous." And I think what you now were reading to me saying the manipulation thing is it's there. I could probably use my gifts
mm,
and take over the world, but I wouldn't want to because it feels wrong. um, but that being said, I think, that's a big part of being human is acknowledging that I've always said, I would never tell someone I could never murder anyone because I don't know what their circumstances were. If I had a child and my child was in danger, would I have that same mentality? Would I choose peace or would I choose violence? I think the human psyche is so complex. So that kind of makes sense for me in terms of my own struggles. And recognizing the inner darkness that I sometimes have when I
yeah,
have my gifts because I can see people's stuff, and it's sometimes really it's a conscious decision to be, well, I'm not going to be mean to someone because I can see their triggers.
yeah, yeah. You may have to be one of the first guests on my podcast when I start one because I've been meaning to, and I feel our conversation can just continue to deep dive into the different ideas and concepts and methodologies that we're beginning to discuss. But of course, this is a Gene Keys reading, so I'm going to stay on task with this.
That's
But
perfect.
that's yeah, yeah, I resonate with that a lot, and that's a beautiful insight. Yeah. So this last section of the reading here is going to be specifically about Gene Key 53. And Gene Key
Okay.
53 is at the sphere of your life's work. And your life's work is said to be perhaps the most prominent sphere of all the 11 spheres of the Gene Keys. And for those who are new to the Gene Keys, or even if you're returning to the Gene Keys, I never tire of talking about how the Gene Keys work. So there are 64 Gene Keys, and the 64 Gene Keys can be said to be 64 different archetypes, 64 different stories, 64 different heroes' journeys, 64
Mm-hmm.
different life lessons, 64 different bad habits that we're meant to overcome so that we can have very good abilities and good habits. So I'm going to share with you about this Gene Key 53, which is a prominent aspect of the life theme that I've already begun to share with you. So it says that it's interesting when I read a little bit ahead and I'm already like, oh yeah, that's it's on point. So you are constantly launching new projects and endeavors, seeking to expand on your life experiences. Because you sense a pressure to move yourself and others beyond any limitations or restrictions linked with old concepts and ideas. You often involve yourself in people's lives as a study of humanity's ways. Whether or not, yeah, right. I almost commented on that too, because I'm like, oh my goodness, that's like our whole pre-session conversation and even our conversation of the session. So whether or not you complete the projects and activities that you start, you will launch into almost anything that catches your interest. Many times assisting others to get things going in their lives that had been held up before you arrived, which is what you were saying just several minutes ago. And there it is. You are fascinated to see how things work, and you easily become restless because of your urge to be active and see something happen. Over time, you develop the maturity to recognize what really motivates you and find your best choices when you are aligned with your design, when you are aligned with your energetic blueprint. So, wow.
It's
Yeah.
funny how my brain was also skipping ahead a little bit because you had said that I liked the 53 like starting projects, and I was like, oh goodness, but if you knew how much I procrastinate and how many out of them I drop because I never finish them, and then three sentences later you're like, but you never finish these things. So I feel very seen there. That's very accurate, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. 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 So sometimes it's just enough to know that there is a resonance. Like you don't have to say a
yeah,
whole lot. Like, I don't know what it is. Like sometimes I share this last portion with people and there's not a whole lot to say. There's just like a, yeah, that's that's
yeah.
me.
Yeah,
Um,
it kind of feels like it's like put me in a little ribbon and like tied it up, and it's so like refreshing because especially in my continuous like self improvements, I'm like, am I on the right path? So like having this kind of confirmation to be like, well, I'm not completely who I'm not supposed to be,
yeah,
you know, is actually really just fulfilling.
yeah. It's a good feeling, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's why I'm a guy, because I like sharing that feeling of certainty and validation, right? Like our habits, our preferences, our behaviors, they're meant to be. And the sooner that we understand that, we let go of
mm,
that shame, that guilt, that repression, and we can begin
yeah,
to live more of our purpose. All right. So I'll say that of these life themes, there are 192.
wow,
So to find resonance with your one out of the 192, well, it's not like there's 10. There's 192. So when you find that resonance, again, there's that validation that you
yeah,
have a purpose, right? You're here to live your preferences and not run away from your purpose. Yeah. All
yeah.
right.
Definitely,
So,
I think
yeah, go
the
ahead. Yeah.
guilt the removing of the guilt is a nice feeling because the mind, especially with my mind, I'm like, oh, I can't take on a new thing because I already did this thing and I have that. So that's really nice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's the inner work. It's the inner work.
Mm.
And from the inner work, you can make even more of an outer impact. And what I love about the gene keys is that there's a map, there's a
Mm.
compass, there's a journey that you can go on, which is what I'll show you now, which is your gene keys profile. So, as a gene keys guide, I don't start by sharing someone's profile. I start by sharing the life theme. And then from that, if there is the resonance, then I
Mm.
explain how the life theme can then be explored even more deeply with your profile. So I'll share that right now. Right. Let me get that ready. Share my screen here. Can you see my screen? Yes? No?
Yes.
Okay, yes, you can see my screen.
Yes.
All right, so this is your Gene Keys profile. And when I was sharing with you your life theme of penetration,
Mm.
that life theme was actually the weaving of four of these keys, four of these spheres. So
Okay.
those four are the sphere of your life's work
Mm-hmm.
with Gene Key 53, which we just shared. It is the sphere of your evolution, the
Mm-hmm.
sphere of your radiance, and the sphere of your purpose. So if your life theme is resonant, which it is, then it may be
Mm-hmm.
worthwhile to explore these individual keys more that make up that life theme. And for today's guided session, I'm just going to focus on the sphere of your life's work. And we're going to go deeper into what is this gene key 53.
Okay.
So, the sphere of your life's work is what you're here to do. It's
Mm-hmm.
your outward expression. It's what you're meant to share with other individuals. The patterns of the shadow and the gift may be things that you encounter quite often in your life. And I'll share more about the shadow and the gift right now. So here, I'll zoom in a little bit more. You can see there are these symbols and words. So there is
Mm.
immaturity, expansion, and superabundance. So these words are referred to as a three-band frequency, and
Mm-hmm.
immaturity is the lowest frequency, which is the shadow frequency. Expansion is the higher frequency, which is the gift frequency, and superabundance is the highest frequency, which is referred to as the siddhi frequency. And siddhi is a Sanskrit word that means divine essence or divine power. So the wisdom of the gene keys is that for any one key that you may be experiencing in your life,
Mm-hmm.
it's all the same energy, it's all the same archetype, it's the same frequency, but it's our
Mm-hmm.
relationship with ourself and others that either makes it a low frequency or a high frequency, a shadow
Mm.
or a gift. So I
Okay.
really love that understanding because it's very integrated, right? If we're experiencing a
Mm.
shadow, it's because we're meant to have a breakthrough from that shadow pattern to experience that gift or that ability or that superpower. So I'll share with you a little bit more of the language to understand this shadow of immaturity, this gift of expansion, and this siddhi of superabundance, because we already referred to it at the last part of the reading. But
Mm-hmm.
what other nuances can we discover from additional language? So the shadow of immaturity, it's about starting things impulsively without readiness or commitment. Avoiding completion leaves projects unfinished, scattered energy, overcommitted, lacking follow through, motivated by restlessness, fear of stillness or failure, driven by societal pressure to do more, to grow faster, to fall in line with what everyone else does. Growth becomes forced and unsustainable, and there isn't a trust in divine or natural timing. So I sense from your reaction that this is a shadow that you experience and feel.
Only 90%.
90%. Yeah. And that other 10% is because you've done some personal growth. So the beauty of the gene keys, the wisdom of it is that every shadow contains a gift. So it's because of this immaturity or because of this seemingly undesirable pattern that you have an ability or a superpower waiting for you. And for you here, it is expansion. So, how can we shift this frequency, this low frequency of immaturity, to this higher frequency of expansion? Well, to understand what expansion is going to help us because the awareness is the ground that allows for that shift and the integration. So, expansion is about growth becoming more organic, more
Mm-hmm.
natural. It's more about embracing the right timing to initiate or act. It's about patience to let things unfold as they're meant to unfold. And it's a good discernment about what projects to commit to and what projects to not commit to. I would even say what projects to start and what projects to start later. Um, yeah, so this expansion, it creates space for conscious expansion, personally
Mm-hmm.
or in business. So the expansion is about sustainable success rooted in alignment and not hustle, not from busyness. So the last one, which is the city, which is the divine essence or the divine power of this key, is superabundance. So this is about an overflow of energy, an overflow of ideas, and it coming from a place of generosity, not scarcity. Some words here are, wow, I like the combination of these words. Perpetual creative emergence. I've never heard those three words together, but I really like it. Not bound by linear progress. Growth is ever unfolding, radiates trust, presence, fulfillment, initiates nothing, yet everything grows around them regardless. So that's the city of superabundance. Um, yeah, so before I conclude and explain how the rest of the journey could go for yourself or someone else, um, anything come up for you as I went through the gift and the shadow and the city?
Definitely that I have a lot of pivoting to do around the shadow.
Yeah,
I think one of my biggest struggles has been learning how to slow down and not forcing myself into a lot of projects and then overwhelming myself with it. So I think, yeah, that was a good insight, is just knowing that I just do need to trust processes and patience and not force things. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I love that. And that is 100% an inner insight. All I did with you is to share a little bit of the Gene Keys
Mm,
system, the Gene Keys language, and you on your own through the practice or the art of contemplation and self reflection, you're able to have this
mm,
inner insight or this inner wisdom come through. And
mm,
that's what I do as a guide. How can I create more awareness and more spaces for others so that they can reflect the wisdom that is just waiting to emerge? So I
mm,
will go through how someone can continue this voyage if they
mm,
like to. So the spheres in the green, the life's work, the evolution, the
mm,
radiance, and the purpose are again directly tied to your life theme of penetration.
mm,
And this is referred to as the activation sequence, or as I mentioned earlier in this session, the genius sequence. It's about activating your core genius, it's about activating your purpose. And I believe that the gifts from each of these spheres, each of these keys, are really meant to be shared with others once you transform and shift those shadows. So after the activation genius sequence is the Venus sequence, which is the spheres in red. And these spheres in red, the Venus sequence, are also referred to as the relationship sequence. So this is about transforming your relationship with yourself, transforming your
mhm,
relationships with others, also transforming the karma that
mm,
may be embedded in your relationship with yourself, the shadows, the shadow relationships you have with others. And the last sequence here in the blue is referred to as the pearl sequence. And the pearl sequence is how you're meant to prosper. This is perhaps my favorite sequence because as a Gene Keys guide, I feel called to share this system with entrepreneurs. So I
mm,
feel that this prosperity sequence or this pearl sequence can be called the entrepreneur sequence. the sphere of your
Mm.
vocation, the sphere of your culture, who are you meant to be around. It could also be interpreted as your niche. Also, the pearl, which is the center pearl of the pearl sequence, is really like, what is that essence you're meant to embody so that you can be generous, so that you can have a flow of prosperity. And well, I can go on a tangent about this because I'm getting excited. I love all this. But I believe prosperity leads to profitability, which is the journey of the
Mm.
entrepreneur. So I believe that where wealth is more of an accumulation, profitability, profitability, prosperity is more of a flow, right? So wealth
Mm.
accumulation, prosperity is more of a flow. And the way I understand profitability is that it's a byproduct of prosperity. So
Mm.
prosperity is when you embrace your purpose, you serve from your purpose, other people around you benefit. The byproduct is profitability. So that is an entire journey, right? There are 11 spheres here. There's the activation sequence, the Venus sequence, the Pearl sequence, 11 different spheres and keys that you can go through. And today in this session, we've just begun to scratch the surface of just
Yeah.
one of your spheres, of just one of your keys. And I'll say
Mm.
that I've been on this Gene Keys journey now for 3 years, and it's still ongoing because it's not just information that you learn and then you're done with. It's wisdom and insight, and the more time you spend with it, the more your life transforms, the more of your purpose you embrace and embody. So that said, there's an entire journey to be had here. If you are in the audience and you're here live or you're catching the replay, if you're curious to begin your own Gene Keys journey, reach out, send me a message. You can book a deep dive in a line and decode session with me. I'll put that in the link in the comments below this live. But more than anything, like I'm a Gene Keys guide, as you can sense if you've tuned in this long. I'm very passionate about this. I really do want to share this with as many people as possible. So, questions, curious, send me a message. And Angelique, thank you so much for being an incredible guest. I'm so glad that we've begun to connect. And is there any last things you'd like to share before we conclude the session about anything while we're still alive?
Just thank you so much for the insights today. Like this, as the colors and stuff is very overwhelming. So I think, having gone into um, a little bit of what you shared before to kind of like warm up before showing that and then going into that, it's, yeah, really insightful. And I really appreciate all the insights I was able to get here today.
It's been an honor. Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, signing off.